Welcome back, my lords and ladies, and I can promise you that despite the delay between the Season 1 video and this video, I blew through Season 2 of Game of Thrones faster than Shay at a Lannister family reunion.
Oh, it's funny, is it?
Number 5, The Prince of Winterfell. Starring the Prince of Winterfell himself, Theon Greyjoy, as he so constantly reminds people to address him as this season. This is a big Theon season, just as its book counterpart is A Clash of Kings. That's the book that Theon becomes a POV character in, allowing us inside his inner monologue to just see how conflicted this man is with his loyalties going into this portion of the story. Theon's going to show up in other parts of this video, so I'm not going to talk about his entire season arc here. I just want to focus on this scene here, really between him and his sister. Yara's after conquering Deepwood Motte, Theon's conquered Winterfell, right? In his head, Theon's achieved the greater accomplishment, right? He's taken the capital of the North, the place he was raised at, the place that he was told would never be his. He's went and taken it. And he just wants an attaboy. He wants a pat on the back, and Yara's not going to give that to him. She is going to bring him home. Theon does not want to go home with his tentacles tucked between his legs, and he is going to resist her. And as we all know, it's a damn shame that he does, because here we are a couple episodes away from the end of the season, and things get ugly for Theon, guys. And this was really his last chance out. Part about this conversation that I really like the most is when Yara has an actual heart-to-heart with him after she sends the men away from the table, tells the story about when he would cry in his crib as a kid, yada, 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 and then she tells Theon, "Don't die so far away from the sea." And I don't know, that I don't know, it's a great line, because she knows what's coming for Theon. They're Iron Islanders. Yes, they can take castles and they can wreak havoc, but they're not meant to hold the castles, right? They go and they do their pillaging and they take their castles and then they move on to the next one and move on to the next one. They're not going to stay there forever. They're just not built for that. And Theon has, 15 or 20 men with him? She knows what his end is there. And that's why she tries so hard to get him to follow her, and he doesn't. Number 4, A Man Without Honor. And for as big as a Theon season as Season 2 is, Jaime Lannister's not too far behind. Admittedly, with less walking space, Jaime is largely penned up inside this cage for most of this season. It's actually the last time we're going to see him inside this cage. Again, he's just still wearing that villain mask, right? Him and Theon, again, I think have two of the greatest arcs in all of the Game of Thrones, The Song of Ice and Fire storyline. We're not seeing his redemption yet in this second season as he continues to just cloak himself in the villain costume. Earlier in this episode, he kills his cousin. He then kills Lord Karstark's son. They want to take his head off, and naturally, Robb and Kat have different ideas because they need to use him, right? He is an asset to them. Lord Karstark, Rickard Karstark, he doesn't want to hear that anymore. The rest of the Stark camp does not want to hear that anymore. They are bloodthirsty. They want to see Jaime hang. And then Jaime has this conversation here with Kat where he explains to her how confusing it is to be a knight. You swear so many vows, so many oaths that eventually they're going to overlap and cross paths, and one's going to contradict the other, and then you're forsaking one oath in lieu of the other one, and again, it's all confusing, right? What are you supposed to do? And Kat says, "You're a man without honor," and Jaime says, "Aha! I've only known one lady inside the bedchamber, and that would be Cersei Lannister. In that regard, I have more honor than your late lord husband, Ned Stark." Kat, of course, looks like she wants to take his head off in this moment, but as we know, she does quite the opposite and lets Jaime walk. Number 3, The Old Gods and the New. Did I mention that this was a big Theon season? I think I might have said that, possibly. But here we are with the Prince of Winterfell, where it all began, too, by the way. This is Theon taking Winterfell. Again, when we last saw Theon, it's a very quick pivot. He's leaving Pike. Yara's to go to Deepwood Motte. Theon's to go to the Stony Shore and raid the fishing villages. However, Theon is going to go and hit that Candyland shortcut and go all the way to the Big Apple there, which is Winterfell, and get that gift for his father. It's very quick, actually. We last see Theon at the end of the last episode, and you close your eyes for a second, and he's already there. He already went to Torrent Square. He led all the Starks out of Winterfell, and then he goes and takes the place when they only have a skeleton crew to defend it. We see just how serious Theon is about this as well. You know, it's one thing to say that you're going to do it, and it's another thing to go and do it. Theon's not exactly in the company of men that are going to forgive half truths or promises. Like, they're going to make sure Theon's held credible. If you say you're going to go to Winterfell, you can't exactly go back on that. These people already don't think very highly of you, but it's really this moment here where he has Sir Roderick brought before him and then ultimately beheads Sir Roderick that you see that Theon is ultimately going down a path now that he can't turn around from. We now go to King's Landing for another great moment in this episode and lay witness to our good King Joffrey getting slapped across the face by a steaming pile of crap as he orders his guard to kill all the common folk in attendance. Very aptly done, Your Grace. Well struck. It doesn't take long to realize that this is no small skirmish. We got a full-blown riot on our hands, and it's going to take every sword we got to get us out of here alive and into safety. And not long after they get the royal party inside behind closed doors, they realize that Sansa's out there. The Hound goes out to save the day and free his little bird. Number 2, Valar Morghulis. It's the Season 2 finale. And season finales are interesting for Game of Thrones because typically the Big Bang episode is the penultimate episode. Then that leaves the finale to tie all the loose ends up. And we have a lot of loose ends to tie up in this episode, and I think they did a very good job with it. I'll just go right down the list. Number 1 I have here is Tywin's horse pooping as it enters the throne room. As he goes and he gets his hand to the king badge from Joffrey and then just walks out like a boss. We get Brienne and Jaime they're on the road after Cat frees them, and they already run into opposition. Robb marrying Lady Talisa. Boy, I tell you what, there could be a series of videos to record and document just how stupid it is what Robb did. Look, Rickard Karstark says it to Robb in season 3, but I'll just say it here. Robb's asking him about, like, where do you think I went wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Karstark says to him, he goes, I think you lost the war the day you married that woman. And he couldn't be more right. Robb screws up. He marries... look, it's Jane Westerling in the books. It's Lady Talisa here in the show. I think from the show's perspective, it was just a time saver to naturally introduce a character that could just kind of be there in the early parts of the season as a medic. Jane Westerling is a noble out of the West. She obviously wouldn't be walking around... performing amputations on wounded soldiers, right? They have the ability to use Lady Talisa there and then form an organic or natural relationship with Robb just through dialogue, rapport, and conversation. Robb doesn't go to the Crag until episode 7, so then they would have had to spend like an episode or 2 arc on introducing Jane Westerling, and it just would have taken up too much time. Without researching it, that's just my guess. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just my thought, but no matter which way you look at it, Talisa or Jane Westerling, it's just really, really stupid. Robb goes and pisses off the wrong person, and then that creates a domino effect, but we'll leave it at there. Theon falls at Winterfell. Theon gives, honestly, one of the best pep-up speeches, motivational speeches, you only live once speech that you could possibly ask a man to muster. And then he gets conked over to the head and a sack put over his head, and he's marched out of Winterfell. Theon's watch at Winterfell is now officially ended. But again, it was a good going away speech. Bran says goodbye to Maester Luwin. Maester Luwin takes the spear, from the Ironborn, and he's dying right next to the heart tree that we've seen before at Winterfell. A very, very touching goodbye. It actually was a stronger and more emotional goodbye than what I remembered. I was like, damn, this is really good. It's like pulling at your heartstrings there. I thought it was well done. Luwin tells them, no, leave, go see Jon at the wall. He'll be able to keep you safe. And then, of course, as we just can see here on our screens, we get the final, the final scene of the show, and it's Sam, Dolorous Edd, and Gren, and you hear the first horn blast, and it's, oh, Rangers are returning. It's Jon and the Half Hand, and then it's 2, and then it's like, oh my God, no, it's the Wildlings. And then the blast that no one's heard in thousands of years. You get the third blast. It means White Walkers are coming, and you can just tell by the look on their faces that it is, oh shit, this is about to get real. And then, of course, Sam just can't keep up with them, and we get these very, very creepy moments here. I thought that was a phenomenal way to end the season. Number 1, Blackwater. Yes, the penultimate episode this season, which is typically the case. That's typically the best episode of Game of Thrones. Not always, and we'll get into that down the stretch, but for season 2, it remains true. We finally get the battle at King's Landing between Stannis and the Lannisters. Stannis bringing all the men with him. He acquires even more after the death of Renly. The Lannisters with their backs up against the wall, but Tyrion got wind of the wildfire, and boy, does he put it to use. Bronn sets them all on fire in the Blackwater, but look, Stannis eventually makes it to shore. He puts up a valiant fight, and ultimately he is crushed by when Tywin and the Tyrell forces come in to take them from the rear. Other good stuff that happens in this episode is everything really that Tyrion has to go through. He lights the Blackwater on fire there right at the very beginning, as we're about to see here. But he goes through a roller coaster after this. Right, he gets Joffrey, who just gets ordered to leave. The men lose hope there, so then Tyrion has to go and put on a really good speech, and he does. He tells a great speech, and he actually gets to inspire the men to go to get a second win and to go out there and fight Stannis' men. And but then we get Sir Mandon Moore, who goes in for the stealth attack on Tyrion, and the one and only Podrick Payne comes in to save the day. So yes, look, Blackwater, I don't have any like crazy hot take here for you guys. Nothing's going to come in and swoop this out from the number one spot. It's a great episode. A lot of these episodes that are dedicated to like a big battle, fight, war, whatever, are typically very well done in Game of Thrones. And this is the first one we see. We don't really get to see any type of crazy battle or fighting in season one. Everything that happens in the Whispering Woods, we get to see the aftermath of it, right? Everything that happens whenever Tywin fights Robb's forces that don't go to the Whispering Woods, we see the aftermath of it. We get to see a full-blown battle here, and I thought that they did a very, very good job. Okay, so that's it. That's the top 5 here for season number 2. Again, number 5 is Prince of Winterfell. 4 is A Man Without Honor. 3 is The Old Gods and the New. 2 is Valor and Morghulis. And number 1 is Blackwater. Look, guys, overall, just in regards to what season 2 is, just overall thoughts on it, I don't think it's as good as season 1. I lushed at great length about how good I think season 1 is from the beginning all the way to the end. I think it has an incredibly high floor. I don't think there's an episode that's under an 8.0 or an 8.5 in season 1. Season 2, I think, has a decent amount of 7s or like 7.5s in it. So I don't think its floor is as high as season 1 is. I don't even think that its highs or its ceiling is as high as we see the ceilings in season number 1. And the reason being because of that, and I think the big thing is that I'm not as interested in some of the storylines and the characters that we see come up in season number 2. My biggest complaint starting off would be Melisandre. Look, I didn't care for Melisandre in the books. I really don't care for her in the show. I find most of the stuff that they do at Dragonstone with Stannis to be boring. Davos, I think, is really its only saving grace there in regards to like a character that I can at least relate to or have an interest in. The dialogue between Stannis and Melisandre is boring, and I'll be real with you guys. The sorcery and the magic in Game of Thrones is just not my favorite stuff. Again, I don't care if it's the book or the TV show. I just don't really care for it. It usually feels like it's just cheap to me in a way out of a situation or a plot, and I've just never liked it. I never liked it back in the day when I read the books for the first time or the second time or watched the show for the first time or the second time. I've just never been able to get into it. So again, I have no interest in really those characters right there, and that's like a big point of the second season is a lot of stuff that happens with Melisandre and Stannis as they, gather as many men as possible to go to King's Landing. Okay, so the other thing that I don't care for in season 2, we get a lot of walking and talking. And I'll start here with Jon Snow and the Night's Watch, then it overlaps into the Wildlings. They just march and march and march forever. And again, I'm not thinking this the first time I'm watching it because it's new to me as I'm watching it back in the day when it first came out. But on a rewatch, it's pretty boring. Jon doesn't get captured by the Wildlings until the 7th episode. Okay, so it's really just Jon and Sam and Gren and Lord Commander Mormont just going from point A to point B to point C to point D, north of the Wall, and then Jon goes off with the Half Hand. Okay, and then the Half Hand, tells Jon all of these great stories and words of advice and how to be a better ranger and man, and then they get the Egret. Okay, they capture Egret, and then the Half Hand and the other guys that are with them are like, basically, let's give these two a moment together. As Jon is told to kill Egret, they got to give him like a private moment. I don't understand that. Like, again, I get it that like it serves the point of like what's about to happen here. Like Egret's going to get away, and then Jon's going to chase after her, and then they're separated from the group. But why would the Half Hand and the other guys close the door and give them like a private moment together as Jon decapitates Ygritte. Like it's just crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense. And then they spend another episode and a half of Jon tying Ygritte up and going from one point to the other to try to find himself back to the half hand before Ygritte once again tricks Jon, runs away, he chases her, and then there's more wildlings that take them to eventually take them to Mance. I don't know. That wasn't my favorite. Again, the first time I watched it, okay, whatever. I'm sure I enjoyed it back then, 13 years ago now, or however long it's been. But on a rewatch, it's a little boring. We then go over to Dany, okay, and Karth. Not my favorite part. We travel through the Red Waste, and eventually they get to Karth, and then they go into Karth. And hey, remember before when I said that I don't really love a lot of the magic and sorcery that happens in Game of Thrones? Well, guess what? We get more magic and we get more sorcery. We get Xaro Zoan Doxos that just constantly talks in a riddle and loves talking about himself in the third person. You get the goofball Pyat Pri. You get the other guy, I don't even remember what his name is, like the Spice Lord guy that also just loves talking about himself. And then we get a lot of Dany telling people that she is the mother of dragons. She is Stormborn. She is the Unburnt. Like, again, and then we finally get to the House of the Undying, and it's just Dany walks all the way to the top, and her dragons are chained up, and it's just Dracarys. And, like, the little baby dragon fires enough fire at Pyat Pri, who's this, like, super strong sorcerer, to just completely light him on fire before it incinerates him and burns him to the ground. And then he's done, and Dany's free, and they get to go and throw Xar and Zoan Doxos and Daria inside the vault forever and walk away with all this gold and plunder. It just, I don't know. So I guess when it comes down to it, there's just a lot of things I didn't really care for. So when you look at that, Stannis and Melisandre, you look at Jon Snow and the Night's Watch, and then you look at Dany, like those three right there carve out a pretty significant portion of the season 2 pie. I just don't love a lot of that. Again, for the most part, it was either boring or it dealt with magic, and I don't know. I don't love that part of the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. The season's best moments, I think, follow some of the main POVs. Tyrion, for one, as the Hand in King's Landing. The vast majority, if not all of those scenes, are just phenomenal. He instantly, from the first episode in the second season, just goes in there and just is ready to stir the pot, bat the beehive. He's not afraid to piss off Cersei, Joffrey, Sir Meryn Trant. He does not care. Okay, he's got Bran with him, and he's got the Hand of the King badge, and that's all that matters. So well done in how he fools Pycelle, Varys, and Littlefinger. I guess mainly Pycelle, in outing themselves as a rat when he gives each of them a different name as to who Myrcella is going to be betrothed to, and then sending Pycelle to the dungeons. I thought that was great. Him finding out about the wildfire and then going and making sure and seeing that through all the way to the end of the season, where we see him lose the badge and then ultimately all of his power with it. I thought they did a great job with Tyrion. The Theon stuff was phenomenal, guys. Look, I think that they do a great job. Theon is probably my favorite POV throughout the whole Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire books. Obviously, we're not done yet. And again, you see it more, I think, in the books because you get to read his inner monologue. However, in the show, they obviously get to show the way he feels too in moments where maybe he's not in front of a group of men that he has to impress. You can really tell that he struggles with a lot of these decisions. He almost wrote a letter back to Robb telling him what his dad was going to do. He should have left with Yara. He didn't because he wants to impress his dad. I mean, like, let's look. Robb puts him between a rock and a hard place. Okay, we can all sit here and say what we would have done in Theon's situation, but if you go and you're raised by a family for 8, 9, 10 years, and you're essentially, for the most part, treated as if you're one of them, you look at them as your brothers and your family, and then all of a sudden you're sent back to your real family that's also an ancient, old, and proud family where you could actually inherit that castle, right? He never would have inherited Winterfell. And then all of a sudden your dad wants you to fight for you too, but your dad also isn't going to welcome you back here as if you're a hero. You're essentially a grunt to him, and you're going to start over from the beginning, and your sister's going to have more power and influence than you. And you're like, wait, I thought that I was just, I'm a young man here, and I come back to my dad, and I thought he'd be happy and proud to see me, but he actually looks like he kind of hates my guts. Like, we can all kind of understand and relate to how that may be difficult for a human being. And again, you can go and critique what he does. Okay. And again, he makes some dumb decisions, but I can at least understand why he did them. He wants people to be, he wants the appreciation. He wants the pat on the back. He wants someone for once to say good job, son. right? He knows that Ned would never call him his son. Then he goes to his dad, and his dad's not even proud of him. So again, we can all, I think, appreciate and at least understand and relate to like, man, that's a tough spot Rob put him in, okay? And I think the big takeaway from all that, and you see him say it towards the end of the season to Maester Luwin, because Maester Luwin says to him, he goes, Theon, I know you're not the person that you're pretending to be. Like, I know that's not you. And Theon says to him, well, it's too late to pretend to be someone else now, knowing that he's gone down this road too far. He's married to the decisions that he's made. He has to wear that, and he has to accept the consequences. Again, I love Theon. I do. Again, his decisions sometimes just make you just like, you know what I mean, run your head through the wall looking at some of the stuff that he does, but I can at least understand why he does them. Eventually we're not there yet, but you'll start to see how he regrets those decisions, right? And he tries to make them better. That's the true arc there of someone that can be redeemed, right? Theon is a redeemable person, right? And we see that by the end, obviously, that he does, I think, get a chance to ultimately redeem himself. Theon's not a Ramsay Bolton. He's not a Mountain. He's not Joffrey. He's not this black-hearted human being. The things that he does ultimately are because he just wants someone to appreciate him. Got another person like Jaime, right? Jaime's just like Theon. They care about perception. They care about what others think about them, right? Jaime acts like he doesn't, and Tywin says that to him in episode 7 of season 1 at the very beginning when we meet Tywin. Jaime says, I don't care about what people think about me, and Tywin quickly interjects and says, that's exactly what you want people to think, right? Theon and Jaime, they do care about their perception. Jaime more so for like his past actions, obviously with being called Kingslayer, and Theon kind of more so his current actions. But when it comes down to it, I guess just like the root of it, they care about what people think. And I think that that's a very human and realistic trait, right? A lot of people, we care about the way that we're perceived and the way others look at us, okay? Theon and Jaime, despite the world and the setting that they're in, and perhaps like, their day-to-day activities, they care about what others think about them. And again, I find them to be the most relatable characters in the books, and I think they do a really good job with them in showing that in the show. The other part 2 in the season, and I would kind of like split this right down the middle, where part 1 of Arya season 2 is kind of in that part of the season 2 that I don't like. The walking around, the talking, taking forever to get to point A to point B. I forgot to mention before that it took until episode 4 for Dany to get to Qarth. 3 whole episodes it took for her to get to Qarth, and then she's just outside Qarth for a whole episode. Again, there's a lot of walking around this season, okay? And Arya does a lot of that at the very beginning of season 2 when she's with Yoren and the Night's Watch before the Lannisters come and take them away, and then they go to Harrenhal. And then it's kind of like a slog there at Harrenhal. But I think it gets better for her when she gets inside the chambers there as Tywin's cupbearer. Really good scenes there between Arya and Tywin. Tywin's obviously very impressed with Arya's wit and her knowledge and her education, despite her low birth. He knows obviously that she's not exactly as low-born as she's saying, but he doesn't really try to like coax it out of her either. It's not exactly like him putting her down there and putting the rat in the bucket to her chest to try to get her to say where she's from. He kind of just lets her hold on to that secret, which doesn't make a ton of sense, I guess, but really good dialogue between them. You get to see Arya even opens him up a little bit whenever she asks about, did you know your dad? And he talks about his dad, and you can tell that he misses his dad, but his dad also, Lord Tytos, almost ruined the family. Again, that's a whole separate video about what he does, and that's kind of the reason why Tywin takes such a stranglehold over everything that he does in regards to power, because the Lannisters were laughed at. They were mocked, and that's why he went on to do what he did. So I think really good stuff there with Tywin and Arya, and then obviously when Jaqen starts dropping people left and right there, I thought that was very well done as well. Okay, so now to talk about 4 episodes versus 5. I messed up in the first video where I said I'm going to do the top 4 episodes of each season. The more I thought about it, 5 just makes more sense for what I'm going to do at the end of these 8 videos here that takes us through the 8th season of Game of Thrones. Again, I'm rewatching all 73 episodes. That way they're all properly and freshly in my brain. I'm going to pick the top 5 episodes of all 8 seasons. Yes, the 7th season and the 8th season as well, that are shortened. And more in particular, that 8th season that is not only shortened, but just the quality just drops off a cliff, obviously. I'm going to change it from 4 to 5. 5 just enables me to not leave out some of the great episodes in some of these deeper seasons, right? Season 1 was a very deep season. That was hard to pick for, right? There's a few episodes there that got left out that I think were tremendous episodes. And I don't want to see, when it comes down to it, a great episode get left out of, again, the grander scheme of things here that I want to accomplish at the end of this, just because I had 4 episodes per season instead of 5. Okay, 5 is also more of like a round number that just kind of makes more sense. Again, it will all make sense in the end. I promise you guys. Just trust me. So to go back to season 1 real quick, since I only picked 4 episodes, the number 5 episode of season 1 that's going to get a little late nomination here is going to be episode number 5, and that is The Lion and the Wolf. That's ultimately the episode where Ned turns in his Hand of the King badge. He does not want to go through with Dany being assassinated. And then he goes, Littlefinger wants to give him a couple last little tidbits of gossip. And as he comes out of Littlefinger's brothel, Jaime's there. Ned and Jaime fight. Jory's killed, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so The Lion and the Wolf is going to be the number 5 episode in season number 1. All right, guys, so that's the video. Let me know in the comments below what your top 5 episodes are for season 2 of Game of Thrones. Did I get any of these right? Maybe you agree with some of them, disagree on the others. Maybe I completely screwed this whole thing up and just doused it in wildfire. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Please consider liking the video. This is your first time here. Please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.